I reddit her.
What stopped you from killing yourself?
4 years ago, I walked out of my house to jump off a bridge. I was over the railing and was about to jump, but a woman was walking her dog and saw me, and I thought, I don't want her to see this. So I went over to her and we talked. She was lovely. She let me pet her dog. I walked home feeling a little better after that.
Mine too was my dog. I took him to a secluded area for a walk. I had enough painkillers in my bag to knock an elephant out. The plan was to walk the dog, go back to the car, knowing the dog would sleep for hours after his walk, and I would take the pills. I watched him run about, find me sticks to throw, chase squirrels, etc. He was in his element, and I realized, out of the whole family, I was the only one who walked him, and that made him happy, and for the first time in months, I smiled. I drove home, flushed the pills, and from that day, about 20 years ago, if ever I've felt things are too much or I need to relax, I take the dog a walk. Different dog now, obviously, but that's my reset. That's my look how happy I've made something else, which in turn makes me feel valued.
Usually, it is because I know my mom couldn't survive it, and I don't want to put my family through something like that twice. Once, though, that wasn't enough. My sister-in-law sent me a funny picture of their kid. That's when I realized they would have to explain to a 7-year-old what happened. To this day, 5 years later, she has no idea she saved my life.
I think about my brother and not wanting to give him a reason to use heroin again. Also, don't want to give my dad a reason to drink again.
My brother has severe depression just like me, but he lets it show publicly more than I do. Sometimes when I'm sitting in my bathroom, 2 feet away from a handful of final options, I think about how I'd probably be inadvertently taking him down with me, so I don't do it. He needs me in this world just as much as I need him. I've told him as much, but I don't know if he realizes what I mean by it. I don't think my family realizes just how bad it gets for me, but I don't want to make their issues worse. My husband knows everything though, so I have a safety net, don't worry.
I didn't want to inconvenience people with my death.
I get that. 2 things kept me going. I didn't want to leave a mess that others would have to deal with. Whatever method I used, it had to be a sure thing so that I wouldn't end up alive but helpless, paralyzed, for example.
When I was hospitalized for this, a guy came in the day after me that needed a cane and was legally blind. BC, his previous attempt, a year prior, wasn't successful, and instead of he just went blind. To be honest, he was so funny and kind and made us laugh a lot. He was such a joy on our floor.
The grip safety on a Kimber 1911 pistol. If you don't push the back of the grip down, it will not fire. I either got luckily or subconsciously stopped myself. I'll never forget that squeeze and nothing. I think I woke up for the first time in my life after that. Things still ain't roses, but I would have missed out on a lot had someone not designed a safety feature a long time ago.
I had a similar situation. When I turned 18, I bought a Smith & Wesson 9mm for that purpose. I was inexperienced with firearms at the time, so I loaded a magazine, put it to my head, and pulled the trigger. I forgot I had to chamber a round first. That's the only reason I'm alive today and can kiss my kids goodnight.
I am glad you are still here as well. Thank you for living to have those moments with your kids.
I had gone to Walmart, was thinking suicide because of pain from cauda equina surgery. I was looking at kitchen things, and there was a lady in the aisle. She looked like she'd been crying, and I asked her if she was okay. She told me her daughter had killed herself a few weeks prior, and she was just so sad. Turns out her daughter had injured her back, had surgery, and just couldn't take the pain anymore. What are the chances? It still amazes me. No longer suicidal. It lasted about a year. Recovery was no joke. 8 broken vertebrae and loads of hardware. 8.
Suicidal pain is no joke. I understand this 10,000%. 5 years in, 3 brain surgeries, 2 spine surgeries, countless CSF leaks, and all I can do most days is pray one of the doctors I'm seeing finally says it's going to get better. I feel like every day I'm one breath away from dying, and the thought of making it to the end of the day is unbearable. More times than once, my daughters, who are still children, will come in and kiss me on my forehead or touch my cheek and tell me they are just checking on me. The look on their little faces of sheer terror seeing me barely lucid from pain on the ground is enough for me to fight as hard as I can now, because I'd be lying if I said there hasn't been times when I thought ending it all so I don't have to live like this anymore was all I had left. But my children, every single day, are the only thing getting me through these thoughts.
The last time? My dog. I had no idea what would happen to her and I couldn't bring myself to take her with me. Update. 2 months after I first posted this comment and I can't believe the upvotes. Thank you everyone for sharing your pet stories. It's nice to see I'm not alone. I still miss my Storm.
My dog would never have understood. I was planning on waiting until he died of old age. I got help, got better, and he suddenly died at 9 when I wasn't home. I held him against me and my heart was broken, but instead of making a plan, I called my aunt and she gave me his sister that day. I held on to her until she passed in my arms at 15. It was the long, slow goodbye I needed. My darling boy died in 2012. There is not a day I don't miss him. I changed my whole life so drastically that I haven't wanted to die. I don't want to seem like some magic BS, but I put the work in to understand myself and how to have my brain and still be happy. And I am. I went through 2013-2016 of middling contentedness, met my husband, and every week I am so full of joy I feel like I am dying. And I hug my dogs and my sons, and I am so thankful for my darling boy and his sweet sister for keeping me alive.
I was talking to a crow. I told it to caw once for yes or twice for no. Asked it if it understood, and they said yes. Asked if I should jump, no.
Crows are amazing. I was crying in an alleyway once, in my car, and a crow showed up with a little packet of gummy candies, made a massive ruckus until it was sure I was looking, then flew off. Thank you, crow.
Did he give you the gummy candies or just showed them to you and flew away?
He gave them to me. They were tiny pumpkins. Tasted like actual pumpkin as well. I've never been able to find that brand again.
I have a mentally ill kid. If I go, what happens to them? I have no problem going. It's the ripple effect that keeps me here.
Bill Burr made an offhand joke on a talk show when talking about comedians and depression when the topic of suicide came up. He said something along the lines of, well, I have kids now, so that's off the table. I know it was kind of a random comment, but it really resonated with me. If it wasn't for my kids, I probably wouldn't be alive.
There's a comic, I think Cyanide and Happiness, with a kid talking to his father's headstone. He says something to the effect of, Mom said you left to get rid of the sadness. I want you to know you didn't get rid of it. You just gave it to us.
That ripple effect isn't a ripple at all. It's a tsunami of epic proportions, and it has the ability to destroy everything unfortunate enough to fall in its path. Family members of a suicide victim are statistically at a greater risk of succumbing to the same fate. The depth of grief, guilt, and sorrow is insurmountable, especially the children of a suicide victim. My children being swept away in a hell that I created is the very last thing I ever want to leave as a legacy, so I stay. I find a way every single day to just stay the course. Hope may be fleeting, but I hold on to it with every single thing I have, because it's not just my life, it's their life too. Everyone says that they would die for their kids, but I'm choosing to live for mine. Edit. I responded to this thread specifically because I have a child with a disability and could empathize with the need to keep going as a parent. How that became a reason to downvote me is beyond my comprehension, especially in a post about those of us trying to survive suicidal ideation. Negativity here is the very last thing any of us need.
Spite. I realized it's just my brain being an asshole, and I figured if it wants me dead so much, it's going to have to do it the hard way and give me cancer or something, because I'm not dealing with it being a bitch.
Spite kept me alive, too. It seemed like everyone in my life had written me off, and I was about to check out, but I didn't want to prove them right. I figured getting treatment and living well would be the biggest middle finger I could give.
This was my experience. I remember sitting there thinking, fuck them, they're not getting rid of me that easily. It's been 18 years since then, and life has gotten better for me while they all stayed the same.
I honestly have no idea. My attempt should have been successful by all accounts. I ingested the gel of a Duragesic fentanyl patch and woke up around 2 days later. I should have died from the overdose since there was no medical aid rendered. I was 16 at the time and had no experience with drugs of any kind. I'm 37 now and happily married. I'm glad I'm still here.
Patent attorney here. I know why you didn't die. I have filed dozens of applications on various inventions that release naloxone or similar opioid antagonist when a transdermal device, i.e. a patch, is misused. Under prescribed use, the naloxone is sequestered in a hidden compartment, but misuse, for example squeezing the gel out for oral ingestion, releases a clinically effective amount of antagonist to neutralize the opioid or at least block its euphoric effect, as well as prevent overdose. These inventions occupied the bulk of my 30s and 40s. I was not aware that these inventions were largely implemented, or if they were, that they were effective in situ. Basically, until 5 minutes ago, I thought I had essentially wasted 2 decades of my life. Purdue Pharma was my biggest client, but now I realize that my law partner, our inventors, and I may have prevented your death. Thank you for sharing.